This is the shechita of sushi. Let's not call it.
It's true. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm gonna 100%. Thank you. All right, Javosai, good morning. Let's begin. So first of all, before we begin, incredible yashar koach to all those who came to the Siyum last night, participated in the Siyum last night. Again, a very special thank you to Saeed for really coordinating everything, and a special thank you to Rabbi Tzvi Wolner for the, we didn't get to thank him last night because he wasn't able to be there, but for the delicious sushi, thank you very much. We should be Zochem, to be Messiah, many more Masechtos together. And as somebody pointed out to me, I made a mistake. I said last night that it's 2 years until the Siyum. In fact, it is 1 year from this January 1st, 2020 is the Siyum Hashas. The Saeed is already working on the preparations for our shir, feverishly underway in Meretz Hashem. I just told him he's working the shir, right? So, but it's incredible to think that we're a year away from this incredible accomplishment. But I share this morning is dedicated. All the shirim this month is dedicated by Leah's soul as a schus for her daughter Ilana Bas Esther. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah that Ilana, together with Kol Cholei Yisrael, have a complete and enduring refuah. So I'll say with that, let's begin. I also want to thank Kalman Akiva for giving shir yesterday and doing an incredible job at that. The feedback has been wonderful. Yashar koach. And also I'll say I sent out on the WhatsApp this morning just a couple of pictures that are associated with today's daf. I know that Reb Kalman went ahead and showed the shir some of these pictures yesterday as well. So with that, let's begin. Let's actually begin from the top of Yud Tes Amud Aleph, even though this really belongs to the end of the previous sugya, but it'll be a good segue into today's sugya. So the Gemara says as follows: V'hilchasa, the halacha is mishipuye kova ulamata kshera. That shchita, if it begins ultimately again from the sheep, and Abosai again, you could see on the images that I sent out today. You could look at it before or after you partake of the ragalach. That's up to you. But again, I will say you could see again, these are actually incredibly important pictures. The shepuye kova, I will say, which you see over here. The kova ultimately again being the, I guess what we'll call the thyroid cartilage. So we'll say shipui kova, which is the slant of the helmet of that cartilage. So mishipui kova ulamata kshera. So we'll say again, I'm not going to keep on defining these terms because ultimately you'll just reference the images that I sent out and you'll be able to see it. So mishipui kova ulamata kshera. V'hainu dishir bechiter. We'll say, but this is assuming that you did not cut through all of the cartilage. Now, I will say, interestingly enough, you'll notice on the images I sent out that what we define as the chiti, which literally means the kernels, actually is a reference to the vocal cords. That if you go ahead and you cut through the thyroid cartilage, so ultimately the shechita will be okay as long as you do not cut through the actual vocal cords themselves. Rav Nachman Achsher Mishep Kui Kovalamata. Rav Nachman said that if you cut from the slant, we call it the slant of the helmet, Shepuya Kovalamata, Rav Nachman said the shechita will still be kosher. Amr Rav Chanan bar Rav Katina, Rav Nachman, Kiman, Rav Nachman, who do you hold like? Lo Rabbanan v'lo Rabbi Yossi, but Rabbi Yehuda. Whose shita are you reflecting? It does not seem to be in conformance with the Rabbanan, nor does it seem to be in conformance with the shita of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. So Rav Nachman responds in a very interesting way. Amar le ana lo chilik yadana v'lo bilik yadana. He says, I don't know chilik, I don't know bilik. So Rashi points out that maybe chilik and bilik are reference to Rabbi Yehuda. A reference to Rabbi Yossi, a reference to the Rabbanon. Then Rashi says, in fact, chilik and bilik, Rabbi Yossi, is like an expression. Hoi peloi. I don't know chilik, I don't know bilik, I don't know the Rabbanon, I don't know Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Ana shmaita yadano. All I know is the halacha as it was conveyed to me. Dam Rab Chia bar Abba Am Rabbi Yochanan, V'amri Am Rab Abba bar Zavda Am Rabbi Chanina, V'amri La Am Rabbi Yaakov bar Idi Am Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mishipui Kova Ulamata Kshera. That I will say, as long as the shechita takes place from literally again the slant in the helmet, and again I will say you can see. It's the slope of the thyroid cartilage. Again, just looking at the images I sent out, as long as you shecht from the slope of the thyroid cartilage and below, ultimately, again, the shechita will be kosher. Rabbi Shmuel Levi. Rabbi Shmuel Levi says, Mugremes dirab. So we'll say, remember again, this is all important because what this introduced to us, I will say, is the psul in the shechita called hagrama. I will say, what's hagrama? So hagrama is when you shecht outside of the permitted area. Interesting enough, we're going to see that we're going to spend much more extensive time focusing on these psuli shechita. But hagrama is, again, we begin to see now that there is an area in which shechita is permitted to take place. Outside of that area, that is called the psul of hagrama. So now Rabbi Shmuel Levi says, Mugremes Rabbanon, Kasher Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. This is really just a carryover of yesterday's daf. So Rabbi Shmuel Levi says, that which is hagrama, according to the Rabbanon, is in fact kasher according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, Kshel Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, and that which is considered to be hagrama outside of the prescribed area for shechita, according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, is in fact kasher according to Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus. To which the Gemara says, okay, pshita. Rabbi, we saw this in yesterday's daf. That's obvious. Maudatim. What would I have thought? Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus adirabanan kai. I might have thought that maybe Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus is going on the shita of the Rabbanon. Kamash malan that is not the case. I ve'ima hachinami, and I will say, why don't you say that indeed that is the case, that is true. Im kain heyed alemi boile. Then I will say the Gemara should have used the lashon of heyed alei. The hilchasa, and I will say the halacha is Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus dekai Rav Nachman kavase. The halacha in fact follows Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus because Rav Nachman subscribes to Shita. And I will say, I just want to point out, this is actually no different than the first line we began with today, which was the top line of the Tesam Dalif, that v'hilchasa mishipui kova ulamata kshera, that halacha l'maisa will say, as long as you are shechting from the shipui cover, from the slope of the thyroid cartilage and down, right below that, your shechita will be kosher. So we'll say, so the Rishonim ask why after we got finished saying this line on the top of the Amud, why the Gemara needs to come back again and say that the halacha follows Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus when it's the same thing. But okay, that's a discussion amongst the Rishonim. Amrav Hunam Ravasi. Machlokes. So we'll say we're going to get into now a couple of very, very interesting cases. Machlokes b'sheshachat shnei shlish v'higrim shlish. Well, so listen to this case. You have a following situation. The sheshachat shnei shlish, you did 2/3 of the shechita in what we'll call the permitted area, v'higrim shlish. But for 1/3 of the shechita, you went outside of the prescribed area. So we'll say you could see, by the way, when you begin to look, obviously these images are enlarged, but you could begin to see how you could very easily go in and out of the prescribed area of shechita. So listen to this interesting case. So you're going ahead and you're shechting, you shecht 2/3 of the shechita within the permitted area, v'higrim shlish, but 1/3 of the shechita outside of the prescribed area. So I'll say, so what's the halacha on such a situation? So we'll say ultimately again, So the Rabbanon require that the rove of that the entirety of the shechita take place in this area called the Tabas Gidol. So you can see that area referenced on the image as well. Rabbi Yossi Yehuda Savar Rubo Kikulo. Rabbi Yossi, on the other hand, holds that no, as long as you have the majority taking place in the area called the Tabas Gidola, then even if, so in this case you're having 2/3 taking place in the Tabas Gidola, 1/3 taking place outside of the Tabas Gidola, Rabbi Yossi Yehuda says it's okay. Aval Higrim Shlish V'shachat shnei shlish. But I will say, if ultimately, again, you did hagrama on 1/3, so 1/3 of the shechita took place outside of the prescribed area, 2/3 took place inside the prescribed area, divrei hakol psula. Everyone will agree the shechita is possible. We'll say, why is that? Listen to this. Even though, again, in this case, you have 2/3 of the shechita occurring in the prescribed area, the order over here is very important. Everyone will agree that it's possible. Why? Because time that the animal, at the time that the life force departs from the animal, you need that the majority has taken place in the shechita. Now, both say, now watch this. In this case over here, in this second case, you had over here of 1/3 hagrama, 2/3 shechita. We'll say so 1/3 in the non-prescribed area, 2/3 in the prescribed area. Chazal, the Gemara is working off the assumption that the animal dies after more than half, after 51% of the siman is shechted. Therefore, in a case where you did the first third outside of the prescribed area, it turns out that what? At the 51% mark, the animal really had the majority of the siman shechted outside of the prescribed area. So because of that, when the animal died, Rabosai, there was not 51% done in the prescribed area. See, here this meaning, this is not just about, we would have thought, one might have thought, that as long as you have 2/3 of the shechita done in the prescribed area, even if 1/3 takes place outside rubo kekulo. What the Gemara now is introducing to me is the following idea, which is that at the time the animal dies, which is at the time of that 51% of the siman is cut, the majority of that shechita or the majority of that cutting must have been done within the prescribed area. So, for example, I will say in this case of higrim shlish, the shachat shnei shlish. You did agrama, so in other words, the first third of the cutting was done outside of the prescribed area. The subsequent 2/3 was done within the prescribed area. When you look at that, when the animal dies on both sides, the majority of the shechita was done outside of the prescribed area. By the time you get to the 51% mark, the majority of that took place in the hagrama area and not ultimately in the prescribed area. Rav Chisda says, Adrabah, I could say just the opposite. Leomar ipcha, machlokes, b'shehigrim shlish, v'shachat, shnei shlish. Say that the machlokes is in the following case, where Rabbi say you did the hagram. Remember again, higrim means I'm cutting the siman outside of the prescribed area. So if ultimately, again, I first cut 1/3 of the siman outside of the prescribed area, v'shachat, shnei shlish, and then I do 2/3 of the shechita in the prescribed area. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Midi dehavia chatzi kana pagum. Because Rabbi Yossi will say that in that case, ultimately, what should be the halacha? That should be like a case of, we'll say, what happens if you come to the trachea, and it turns out that half of the trachea is already cut. So we'll say that's the case of chatzi kana pagum, where half of the trachea was already cut. Look at Rashi for just a moment. It's before Rashi gets wide, about 4 lines. Meidi dava chatzi kana pagum. Darmino lekaman hare shahaya chatzi kana pagum elav. But if half of the trachea was cut on its own, the whole sif I love kolshu, and I will say the shochet comes along and adds just a little bit. So what's the halacha? The gamru shchita. So we're going to see, as Rashi points out, this sugi is on chaf ches chaf tes. So I will say, so if the shochet finds that half of the trachea is already cut, and the shochet comes along and just adds a little bit more to the cutting of the trachea, the halacha is shchita so kshera. The afa agav dechi nafka chiyusa lav ruba b'shchita. And I will say, that is true even though what? Even though it turns out that when the animal dies, the majority of the siman was not cut through shchita. In fact, the majority of the siman was cut how? Through just other means. In other words, it was already 50%, what's the right word? Severed, thank you. 50% severed. So we'll say, so why don't we say, right? For the Rabbanan will say, Hasam makom shchita, hacha lav makom shchita. The Rabbanan will say, no. The case of chatzi kana pagum, I will say, is a case where what? Is a case where it's true the trachea was already 50% cut, but it's 50% cut where? It's 50% severed where? In the makom shchita, in the right area. We're dealing with here over here, we'll say, a different kind of case, where the trachea is severed, but ultimately, again, it's not severed in the makom shchita. Aval shachat shnei shlish, the higrim shlish, but we'll say in a case where 2/3 of the trachea was cut in the right place, and then 1/3 of the trachea is cut in another place, dirvia kol kshera. Everyone will agree that ultimately, again, the shechita is kosher. Why? So the Gemara says, the hatnan rubo shel echad kamo, because we'll say we are subscribing to the idea of rubo shel echad kamo, that rubo kikulo, once you have 2/3 of the trachea cut in the appropriate area, even if 1/3 is cut outside of the appropriate area, ultimately, again, it will be kosher. Amar li Rav Yosef, man nema lan Dahuruba dahasam. Lav Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Katanila. We'll say, how do you know if the case of rove that we're discussing over there is not reflective of the position of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara says, Dilma, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Katanila. Abaye says, Atu kol rube da'alma, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Katanila. We'll say, first wide line, New Testament Aleph. Are we saying that every single case of rove is reflective of the position of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda? Amarle Ana ruba de shchita kamina de shamana lehu de pligi. I was saying, no, we're not saying every single case of rove is Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, but every single case of rove and shchita, where there's an argument, where there's a machlokes, could be reflective of the view of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Lishnachin, I will say another version of this. Amar Rav Huna bar Amar Rav Asi machlokes shehegrim shlish the shachat shnei shlish. So we'll say, so the machlokes in this case over here is as follows. Where what? Where again, with the higrim shlish, 1/3 of the shchita took place outside of the prescribed area, and shachat shnei shlish, ultimately again 2/3 took place in the prescribed area. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda savar midi dehavia chatzi kanapagum. Because Rabbi Yehuda will say that this is like the case of chatzi kanapagum. Now, both say this is very interesting because what we're saying over here is as follows. Here's what we know. When is shechita, we'll say, when ultimately, again, when do we assume the animal dies? 51% of when the simen, when the trachea is severed. That's what we're assuming. Now, this is exceptionally important. Because we'll say, what we're saying over here is as follows. Let's go with what we know. Now, we never actually saw this case. We're just seeing it quoted over here. So we'll say, if the shochet opens up the animal, and it turns out that 50% of the trachea is already cut. It's already cut. The shochet takes his knife and he cuts a little more. It appears that what's the halacha? Valid shchita. So we'll say, now watch this. What we're trying to do now is apply that concept to a case not where the trachea was severed, but rather where what? Where you cut in the wrong area. So we'll say, for example, in this case now, what we're saying in this case over here is higrim shlish, the shachat shnei shlish. So we'll say in this case over here, I cut 1/3 of the trachea where? In the wrong area. So let's assume whatever it is, mishipui kova, right, ulamala. I cut it above, the cartilage, or whatever it is. I cut it above the thyroid cartilage. Wherever it is, I'm cutting it in the wrong area. I did 1/3 of the cut in the wrong area, but then I come back down with my cut into the right area. And 2/3 happens in the correct area. So what's the status of the shchita? So we'll say, so remember again, the good news is, if all I've done is 1/3 of the cut in the wrong area, the good news is what? Right? I haven't gotten to the 51% mark. So I started 1/3 in the wrong area, come back down 2/3 into the right area. What's the status? Says the Gemara, well, maybe I could say the following. Rabbi Yossi Yehuda savar midi dehavi achatzi kanapogum. Rabbi Yossi Yehuda will say, well, it should be good. Why? Because this should be no worse than when I'm shechting the animal and I find that 50% of the trachea was already cut. And what's the halacha? If 50% was already cut, as long as I get to that 51% with my own movement, halacha l'maisa, it's good. So therefore, if I shecht 1/3 in the wrong area, as long as the subsequent 2/3 are done in the right area, we should be good to go. Right? The Rabbanan will say, no, you can't really compare the cases because hasa makom shchita, hacha lav makom shchita. So we'll say the Rabbanan will argue, and the Rabbanan will say, that case, I will say, if chatzi kanapagum, that's talking about a case where the trachea was cut in the correct area. It's true, it's pagum, it's true, it was already cut, but it was cut in the makom shchita. Mashe'in kain, where 1/3 of the cut was done outside of the prescribed area for the shchita. Once you have 1/3 done outside of the makom shchita, you're out. So we'll say, by the way, this is the fundamental machlokes between the Rabbanon and Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda. Right? Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda will say that even if 1/3 was done outside of the prescribed area, that is no worse than what? The case of chatzi kana pagum. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda will say that as long as the remaining 2/3 of the shechita are done in the right area, the shechita will be good. The Rabbanan will say you cannot compare the case of chatzi kana pagum to the case of 1/3 being done outside of the prescribed area. Why? Because chatzi kana pagum at least is done in the right area. So the Gemara says, "V'Rabbanan hasam makom shchita, hakam lav makom shchita. Aval shachat shnei shlish v'higrim shlish." Rabbi say, if you went ahead and you shechted 2/3 of the simon in the right area, and what you then did the remaining 1/3 outside of the prescribed area, divrei hakol kasher ksher. Everyone will agree that the shchita is kasher. Why? The hatanan rubo shel echad kamo. Because Rabbi say again, once you've got 2/3 in the right area, then what? Rubo kikulo, and you are good to go. In other words, once you have the rov done, the shchita is kasher. Maskef Rav Chisda, man leimalon dahu ruba dahasam, lav Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda, lav Rabbi Yossi. Sorry, man leimalon dahu ruba dahasam, lav Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda katanila. Why are you saying that the case of the rov over there is not reflecting the view of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda? Zom Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Huda katanila. Amr Rabbi Yosef. Atu kuruba da'alma Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda katanila. Why do you automatically assume that every single case of rov is reflective of the view of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda? Amarle ana ruba de shchita kamina de shamana lahu de pligi. I will say, the Gemara says, I'm not saying every case of rov, but I am talking about the case of rov and shchita, because we see that Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda disagrees in that case. Fine. So I say the Gemara now goes weiter. Higrim shlish. So what's that? Just so you should know, by the way. Just so you should know. So we do paskin like Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda in that particular case. We paskin about as we will see later on that the halacha l'maisa is that matzah chatzi kana pagum. If the shochet goes in and opens up the animal, and he finds that half of the trachea has already been severed, and he severs a little bit more, 51%, the shchita is going to be kosher. And I will say along those same lines, the way we will paskin is that halacha l'maisa, if 1/3 of the shchita was done outside of the prescribed area, but then the remaining 2/3 are done inside the prescribed area, we will paskin that such a shchita is going to be good. Why? Because that case is no worse than when you find 50% of the trachea already severed. Just like if you find 50% severed and the shochet does the extra 51%, the shchita is good. So too, if you do 1/3 outside the prescribed area, the remaining 2/3 in the prescribed area, then ultimately again the shchita will be good as well. Again, we're going to see that sugya on Chavches Chavtas. So the Gemara goes weiter. Higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish. We'll say now it gets more interesting. Watch this. I did 1/3 of the shchita outside of the prescribed area, right? 1/3 in the prescribed area, and then the last third outside of the prescribed area. So we'll say again, this just would simply be like a V, right, or like an A, right? So we're going to see, by the way, this is going to be called shachat kimasreik. We're going to see this in Amud Beis, where you shecht pretty much like the teeth of a comb. You're just going in. This is called shchita under the influence, right? This is an SUI, right? So so he's going up and down, up and down. The boss say, in all seriousness, we will see. You'll see. How does a case like this happen? It happens very easily. How does it happen? The animal moves, right? So we're going to see, by the way, now you begin to see. You remember again in our, say, admit it, you missed the Kachim days. Admit it, you can say it, it's okay, we're amongst friends, you missed the Kachim days. But say, if you remember in our Kachim days, we learned about Shechita in the Beis HaMikdash. What was there right outside of the Mizbeach by the Beis HaMikdash? Something called the Tabas. What was the point of the Tabas? They pushed the animal on its side, and they locked the head in place. All of this was done, I will say, because animals move. Animals don't say, please shech me, right? Please, right? No, animals generally are not cooperative with the process of shechita. So we'll say, so again, all of these cases, as crazy as it sounds, 1/3 here, 1/3 there, it easily happens. And I will say it easily happens with relatively minute movements, right? Very small movements on the part of the animal send the shochet's knife all over the place. So watch this. Hegrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, v'hegrim shlish. So we'll say 1/3 was done outside of the prescribed area, 1/3 in the prescribed area, 1/3 outside the prescribed. So we'll say, what do I do in this case? Rav Huna Amarav Kshera. Rav Huna says the name of Rav that it's kosher. Rav Yehuda Amar, so the Gemara says, Rav Huna says the name of Rav that it's kosher. Rav Yehuda Amarav Ksheva. So we'll say Machlokas in the position of Rav. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna Amarav Kshera. So we'll say, so now what's the Machlokas? So Rav Huna says the name of Rav that it's kosher. Ki nafka chiyusa, b'shchita kanafka. So we'll say at the end of the day, when the animal dies, it dies in a state of shchita. Because remember again, what's the case? 1/3 hagrama, 1/3 good, 1/3 hagrama. The life leaves the animal when? At 51%. At 51%, what was happening? It was in the proper area. Therefore, again, the animal is kosher. So the Gemara says, "Who don't have treifa, but in ruba b'shchita v'leka." So we'll say on the other hand, Rav Yehuda will say the name of Rav. No, because we'll say here's the problem: 2/3 of the shchita was done outside of the prescribed area. Because remember, again, it's 1/3 in hagrama, 1/3 shchita, 1/3 hagrama. But again, we'll say, what does the term hagrama mean? Hagrama means shchita outside of the prescribed area. So while it is true that technically speaking the animal died while the shchita was happening again in the prescribed area, you have a case over here of, so we'll say this is actually an interesting case, because here you have 2/3 of the shchita itself, the physical shchita, that are occurring outside of the prescribed area. But yet, interestingly enough, when the animal died, it died when? During a point in time when the shchita was being done when? Inside the prescribed area. So machlokes. So treifa ba'ina rob b'shchita v'leka. So he says, Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav, that you require the majority of you require a ruba b'shchita, a majority to be done in a state of shchita. And I both say that is lacking over here. Next case, shachat shlish v'hegrim shlish v'shachat shlish. I both say reverse case. You did 1/3 shchita in the right area, 1/3 hagrama, 1/3 shchita. What's the status in this case? So let's listen to this. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Kshera. So Rabbi Yehuda says the name of Rav, that ultimately again such a shchita is kosher. And I both say, now again, why? Why would the shchita be kosher? Because you've got rubo gekulo, you've got 2/3 done in the state of shchita. So let's listen to this. Asu shayle Rav Huna. They came before Rav Huna. They asked him, what do you do in a case like this? Right, where it's 1/3 shchita, 1/3 hagrama, 1/3 shchita. So Amar Lahu treifa. So Rav Huna paskin that such an animal is a treifa. Right, it's a treifa. Rabbi say, why is it a treifa? So Rabbi say, Pashas the reason he says the treifa is why because Rabbi say, remember at the 51% mark, what's happening over here? Right, it's outside, and therefore Rabbi say, listen to this. So Shama Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi say, this is great. So Rabbi Yehuda heard that Rav Huna treifed up his animal. Ikbid, Rabbi Yehuda lost it. Charifna umachsher. When I say it's treif, this guy Huna says it's kosher. Umachsharna treif. And when I say it's kosher, I say, see, I want to just tell you something. The world of kashrus has not changed a bit, right? I will say it's the same exact thing. So Rabbi Yehuda says, when I say it's treif, he says it's kosher. When I say it's kosher, he says it's treif. So Rabbi say, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says the truth is shaper kamikbed. The truth is Rabbi Yehuda's right to get upset at me. Chadad iu shamiele minei Rav va'ana lo shmiele. First of all, the truth is Rabbi Huna says Rabbi Yehuda has a direct Masorah from Rav. Heard from Rav, I do not have a Masorah from Rav. Furthermore, va'od ha'ika ruba b'shchita. And the truth is Rabbi remember again, Rabbi Yehuda's position, Rabbi is in general, as long as you have a majority of shchita, ultimately, again, you are good to go. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yehuda's fact that he can angry at me is good. So Amar Rav Chisda says Rav Huna, lo tahadebach. So Rav Chisda gives Rav Huna chizik. And he says, no, do not retract, do not back down, and I'll tell you why. So the Gemara says, the imkain mafsadata la lekamaisa. Because if you back down, you're going to lose out on the first case. So we'll say, what's the first case? Look at Rashi, test some of the base. Mafsadata lekamaisa. The Amrit Mishmei Derav higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish kshera. Alma lav beruba b'shchita talya, ela denepok chiyusa b'shchita. Because Rabbi say, he says, remember again, see Rabbi say, you want to understand what the fundamental tension over here? The fundamental tension is, do we say that a kosher shchita is predicated ultimately again on what? On rov, that you need the majority of the simen, in this case the trachea, the majority of the trachea to be cut in the prescribed area? Or Rabbi say, is this a din of when actually the life leaves the animal, right? And really what you require is what? You require ultimately, again, that at the 51% mark, that the cutting itself is being done in where? Right? In the prescribed area. So I will say, so interestingly enough, it appears that halacha l'maisa, it depends on the case. In other words, really ideally, we want rov of the siman to be shechted. But I will say, but it does appear that halacha l'maisa, what we look very carefully at is what was being cut after 51% mark. If after 51% mark, ultimately again, the siman was being caught in the right place, then the animal is going to be shechted, even if it turns out that the rov of the siman was shechted outside of the prescribed area. But if at the time of the shechita, ultimately again, even if you were in the right area, but the majority of the siman was not cut in the prescribed area, so that's going to be the machlokes case. But Rabbi say it appears, based on what we said before, the case of higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish, you have, which is the case of where 1/3, 2/3 essentially done outside of the prescribed area, 1/3 done in the prescribed area. But that third, Rabbi say, was which third? The 51% mark, that it appears that such a shechita ultimately again will be kosher. So we'll say, so again, I say appears because this is going to be an ongoing tension. But just to understand, we've now arrived at the thrust of the machlokes over here. Is it that you require the rov of the siman? And what we're looking for at the end of the day is that 51% of the cutting was done in the right place, or that no, at the 51% mark, meaning at the time when the animal died, where were you cutting? If you are cutting inside the prescribed area, then ultimately again the shechita will be good. If you're cutting outside the area, even if it turns out that in fact you shechted the majority of the right siman, but at the 51% mark, at the moment when the animal died, if you were outside of the prescribed area, you're out. They're both saying, now it appears that we're really aligning, here says Gemara, so let's finish the rest of the sugya. My taima, kamachshar techinafkit chiyusa be'achshera kanafka. Hachanami kinafka chiyusa bahagrama kanafka. So we'll say ultimately what the Gemara seems to be saying is as follows: that when it comes to shechita, what we look for most is what? Where at the time when the animal died, where were you cutting? If you are cutting ultimately again in the prescribed area, even if the majority of the siman that was cut was not behechsher, as long as at the time ultimately again that the animal actually died, you are cutting in the prescribed. So that's why the case of higrim shlish, shachat shlish, higrim shlish, where again I will say 2/3 of the siman was done outside of the prescribed area. As long as that middle third was done in the prescribed area, because I will say again, if that middle third was done in the prescribed area, then what? Then it turns out that at the 51% mark, the animal was being shechted in the area, the shechita will be good. We'll say, which is really incredible. Ekur Rav Nachman the Surah. We'll say Rav Nachman went to Surah. They asked him the following question: Shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish. Mahu. What happens? We'll say you do shechita in the right place, then hagrama, you go out of the prescribed area, and then shachat, you come back and you finish it off. What's the halacha? Amar lahu, lav hainud Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi. Is this not the case? Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi, Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi, shchita asui kimesrei kshera. Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi said that a shchita that's done like a comb, that's what I mentioned before, which means like the teeth of a comb, up and down, up and down, up and down, is kosher. So what's the shayla? V'dilma b'makom shchita. So we'll say maybe Rabbi Elazar bar Minyumi just said that where? B'makom shchita, that if you do shchita like a comb, but it's b'makom shchita in the right area, then it's kosher. Shchita, so the Gemara says, makom shchita ma'ila memra. I don't understand what's the chiddush, Rabbi say. Ultimately, again, if it's the makom shchita, what would I have thought? Ba'inan shchita miforas v'leka. So Rabbi say, I might have thought that really when it comes to shchita, I require what? I require a straight shchita, a straight cut. Kamash malan, the Gemara says you don't require a straight cut, and even it's kimiforas, even if it's up and down, kimasreik I should say, sorry, not kimiforas, kimasreik, up and down, the shchita will still be a valid shchita. Yosef Rabbi Abba Chorid Rav Kana, Yosef Rav Kana Kameid Rav Yehuda. So let's listen to this. So again, so in the Gemara just telling us who's sitting where. Rabbi Abba sat before Rav Kahana, and Rav Kahana sat in front of Rav Yehuda. V'Yosef v'Kamar, shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish. You should write shchita on a third, hagrama on a third, and then shchita on the last third. What's the halacha? Amar lei, shchita so kshera. Shchita is kosher. Now both say, now why would you say shchita is kosher in such a case like that? Rov. So both say again, here's the tension, right? Is it just that we look at rov of the siman, and as long as the majority of the siman was cut in the right place, then you're good? Or do we say no? What we need to know is what? where was the animal being shechted at the 51% mark? I don't really care about rov of the siman, right? What I really care about most is at the 51% mark, were you shechting the animal in the prescribed area? He says shchita kshera, higrim shlish, v'shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish. We'll say, what about this case, right? Higrim shlish, shachat shlish, v'higrim shlish. What's the halacha? So we'll say first wide line. Amar le shchita psula. He says ultimately that case is going to be puzzle. Shachat b'makom nekev mahu. We'll say, listen to this interesting case. Makom nekev. If you look at Rashi, it's almost right across in Rashi. B'makom nekev shayuchatzi kana pagum b'tzido achitza. So we'll say in this case over here, there was a hole already in the trachea. Rashi says over here, this is a case of chatzi kana pagum. This is the case where half of the trachea, or some amount of the trachea, was already severed. So what's the halacha? Say if you just continued the cut there, Amar le shchita so kshera, says the shchita is kosher. Shachat upaga bo nekev mahu. So we'll say, so again, understand the difference in these two cases. In case number one, shachat b'makom nekev, we'll say means I start the cut from the area where there's a hole. I start to cut from the hole, so the Gemara says it's kosher. Shachat upaga bo nekev. What happens if I'm shechting, Rabbi say, and what? As I'm shechting, I get to the spot where there is a hole. What's the sentence? Rabbi say, now what's the chiluk over here? Look at Rashi. Shachat upaga bo nekev shayachatzi kana pagum bitzido hapnimi latzada mafrekis. Rabbi say, now just on a logistical level, on a technical level, the shaila is where is the hole? In case number one, the hole was by what we'll call the front part of the trachea. So therefore, again, it was by the area where the shochet first encountered. In case number two, so the hole is actually, we'll say, on the back side of the trachea. So he actually doesn't get to it until where? Until when? Or until he's until he's already cutting. So we'll say, so this meaning, in case number one, the hole is at the beginning of the cut. In case number two, the hole is by the end of the cut. So what's that halacha? Amrle shchitasa psula. So we'll say in the second case, so in case number one, he posits that where the hole is at the front part of the trachea. Therefore, the shochet encounters it at the beginning of the cut, the shchita will be kosher. In case number two, where the hole is by the end of the cut, the shchita will be possible. So we'll see why. So Azul Rabbi Abba, Amra Kamed Rabbi Lazar. Azul Rabbi Lazar, Amra Kamed Rabbi Yochanan. Amra Le Maishna. Well, I don't understand what's the difference in the two cases. Why is it when the hole is in the front part of the trachea, therefore at the beginning of the cut, the shchita will be kosher. Masha'en kain when the hole is by the back of the trachea, by the spinal cord, and therefore again the shchita will be pasul. What's the difference? So here we go. Amar le shachat b'makom nekev. So we'll say because if the shochet begins the cut at the space of the hole, so naaseh kimisha shachat oved kochavim v'gamar yisrael. We'll say that's the equivalent of a case of where an akum began the shchita and a Yisrael finished it, right? V'gamar Yisrael, right? So we'll say, and therefore again, look at Rashi for just a moment. Shachat b'makom nekev. Naaseh kimisha shachat oved kochavim chatzi kana v'gamar Yisrael. Dikanafik chiyusa biyada di Yisrael. We'll say, listen to this, because remember again, once again we're coming back to the 51% mark. If an akum did 50% of the shchita and the Yisrael finished it up, what's the halacha, Rabosai? What's the halacha? The shchita will be good. At least according to what the Gemara is saying over here. Why? Why? Because at the 51% mark, it was Yisrael who was shechting it. So therefore, if the shochet begins at the area where there's a hole, so already the trachea is 50%, we'll call 50% severed. The Yisrael finishes it up, it's kosher. Masha'en kain shachat upaga banekev. But Abba say if the Yisrael shechting and he does the shchita, he gets to the 50% mark, and then what? What does he encounter? He encounters the severed trachea because there's the hole. Naaseh kimisha shachat Yisrael v'gamra ovid kochavim. That's what we'll say. That's like what? That's a case of where the Yisrael did 50%, handed over the knife to the akum did the other 50%, and Abba say what's the status of that shchita? Not good. So kari aleh. So we'll say listen to this. So remember again. So he said to him, right? Kari aleh ovid kochavim. You are like an akum, right? Which Rabbi says is another way of saying I politely disagree with your position, right? Amar Rava shapir kari aleh ovid kochavim. So Rabbi says he's right for calling him an akum. In other words, Rabbi say this is a wrong interpretation. Bishlama hasam midahabe leili Yisrael mishchat ruba v'lo shachat ki nafik chiyusa biada da ovid kochavim kanafka elahacha. So let's listen to this. So Bishlama hasam, in that case over there, I'll say it makes sense. Well, I look at Rashi just a moment. I'll say it's Rashi in the last of the short lines. Bishlama shachat Yisrael v'gamar ovid kochavim psula. So we'll say in a case where ultimately again the Yisrael shechted and the Ovid Kochavim finished it. So we'll say I understand ultimately again why in that case. Midahave leili Yisrael mishchat ruba v'lo shachat. So we'll say if the Yisrael shechted 50% and then handed over the knife to the akum, the Yisrael should have gone ahead and shechted the rest. Ki nafik chiyusa biyada da ovid kochavim kanafka. We'll say obviously if the Yisrael shechts 50% and then what? Hands over the knife to the akum and the akum finishes up the shchita, of course the shchita is not going to be good because it is the akum ultimately again who caused the loss of life to 51% to the animal. Alahacha. But Abba say in this case over here, right, the shachat upaga benakav, where ultimately again the Yisrael is shechting, and what? So he shechts 50%, and then he encounters what? The perforation or the hole in the trachea. Alahacha michdi mishchat shachit mali b'makom nakav mali paga bo nakav. So the Gemara says the distinction you're making between when the Yisrael begins by shechting at the spot of the perforation or ultimately encountering the perforation doesn't make any difference. What does it matter if you begin the shechita 50% in or you shecht the first 50 and then again meet the already existing severed area? Either way, halacha l'maisa, the shechita should ultimately be good. So again, what the Gemara ends off by saying essentially is as follows. Everyone will agree that if the Yisrael goes ahead and does 50% of the shechita and then hands it off to the akum to finish it up, of course that case is not going to be good. Because there the Yisrael should have finished the job, but he did not. And therefore if the akum ultimately is responsible for getting to the 51%, the shechita is not going to be good. But Rabbi say, but this notion ultimately again of making a distinction between when you start from the severed area versus getting to the severed area, the Gemara does not seem to like this distinction. So we'll say, we're going to see this case, because this case, later on, we're going to see this case of shachat b'makom nakav. It's going to be exceptionally important, where ultimately, again, you go ahead, we're going to see both of the cases, either where the shochet is shechting, and he begins at an area where the trachea was already severed, versus where he's cutting and he finds the severed area. So we'll discuss that in greater depth. For our purposes, Rabbosai, the Gemara says, your comparison of that case to the akum is unfounded. That does not make any sense. So right, if the Yisrael shechts 50% and then goes in and hands it off to the akum, everyone will agree that such a shechita will not be good. Again, so remember we have two cases with the severed trachea. Case number one is where the shochet begins. He opens up the animal. He sees that the trachea is already severed 50%. He continues the shechita. That's case number one. Case number two is he begins with a fully intact trachea, and then what? As he cuts, he begins to see that it is severed. So we'll say those are the two cases. We're going to see what the halacha is in those cases. But one thing is sure, which is it's not comparable to the case of a Jew shechting and then handing the knife over to the akum. Good. Says the Mishnah. We'll say new Mishnah. Hashochet minat tzdadim. If one goes in and shechts from the side, now we're always assuming the paradigmatic case of shechita is where the shochet is shechting from what we'll call the front of the neck of the animal. What happens if he doesn't shecht from the front, but rather he goes by the side? Now normally you would avoid the side. Why would you avoid the side? You don't want to hit the spinal cord, right? Because that's bone, right? That could nick the knife. But let's say you did. You shechted from the side. Ultimately, again, the shechita could still be kosher. It could still be kosher. Hamolik minat stadin melikasa psula. Rabbi say if you do malika from the side, remember again, malika is where the kohen lops off the head of the bird, right? That you can't do malika from the side. Malika is done from the back, right? So if you do malika from the side, the malika is possible. Hashochet mina oref shchitas psula. Rabbi say if you shecht from the back of the neck of the animal, the shchita will be possible. Can't shecht, Rabbi say, because remember again, that would be what? that'd be cutting through the spinal cord. That you cannot do. Hamolik mina oref, but we'll say if you do malika from the back of the neck, malikasok shera. So we'll say, by the way, when the Mishnah says malikasok shera, it doesn't just mean malikasok shera. What does it mean? That's malika. Right? We'll say malika is severing the spinal cord of the bird and going through the simanim. If you shecht from the front of the neck of the animal, the shechita is kosher. Hamolik minat savar. We'll say if you do malika from the neck of the animal, right, from the front of the neck of the animal, right, so the bird malikaso psula, that malika will be good. So we'll say, so therefore the Mishnah says, pasal, I'm sorry, thank you. Shekol, so malika cannot be done from the front of the neck, thank you. Shekol ha'oref kasher malika, because we'll say for the malika of the bird, the entire back of the neck is kasher for malika. V'chalat savar kasher l'shchita, and for shchita we'll say the entire front of the neck is kasher. And therefore, nimtza, kasher b'shchita, pasal malika. That which is good for shchita is pasal for malika. Malika, pasal b'shchita, and we'll say that which is kasher for malika, i.e. the back of the neck, is going to be pasal for shchita. Good, we'll say, just one more line we're going to stop for today. My oref. So we'll say, what does oref refer to? Ilema oref mamish. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. What does oref mean? It does oref, if you say oref is literal, and I will say, all on an etymological level, what oref means is what? Is back. Maybe back means the back of the head, right? Back of the head. If you want to say that oref means the back of the head, my irya shochet afilu molek nami. So Rabbi say if oref means the back of the head, then Rabbi say not only is the back of the head not good for shchita, but what? The back of the head is not good for malika either. So the Gemara says mimul arpo omer rachmana velo arpo. So Rabbi say what's interesting is as follows. That the Torah uses a double lashon of mimul orpo, opposite the oref. So the Gemara says, so the velo arpo, and not just oref by itself. Ela my oref, rather I will say, so therefore again, ela my oref, mimul oref. Rather, I will say, what does oref mean? Not really just the back of the head, but rather back of the neck. Kediktani seifa kala oref kasher lemalika. As the seifa says, ultimately again, the entire backside of the neck, ultimately kala oref kasher lemalika. The entire neck is kasher lemalika. So we'll say, so what the Gemara is going to go on to explain, we'll say is as follows. Oref by itself could just mean back. Now back means back of the head and back of the neck. What the Gemara now is suggesting is the extra word mimul oref teaches me that back does not mean back of the head, but mimul oref means what? Back of the neck. The Gemara will say, so we're going to stop here for today. The Gemara is going to go on to explain how we learn from the lashon of mimul oref that in fact it means back of the neck. Shkoyach. Let me just stop this. Give me 1 second.